welcome. This is Michael Beach, and you are dialed into the What Are You Doing podcast. This is the show for thought leaders who are investing in the next generation of leadership for their organization. This is also the show for emerging leaders who want to become that next generation of great leaders. Together, we can develop leaders who will, in turn, develop more leaders, and in the doing, make a difference for this economy and our world. All of us at Michael Beach Coaching and Consulting are excited to be able to bring you another podcast episode. We consider ourselves very fortunate to be engaged in the business of contributing to the success of forward-thinking, fast-growth companies. We're grateful to be able to help them to develop and cultivate great leaders at all levels of their companies because it's rewarding and meaningful work. We're thrilled that our work often leads to results that make a difference for a multitude of families that are working at those great companies. We are especially excited today to have the opportunity to introduce you to today's special guest, my friend and an extraordinary leader in her own right, Terri Suter, the president of Fastbridge Learning, a division of Illuminate Education. Prior to this role at Illuminate Education, Terri was the chief executive officer of Fastbridge Learning, a Minnesota company that Illuminate Education acquired in summer of 2019. Let me tell you a little bit about Terri Suter. Terri's a veteran in leading startups and building technology companies in the education sector. Driven to build and cultivate purpose-driven companies, Terri is especially passionate about the promise of innovation to lift educators and improve learning outcomes as vital to our schools and to our communities. Terri joined Fastbridge Learning as the CEO at its genesis from the University of Minnesota and led the startup through a phenomenal 4-year period of growth from 2015 to 2019. The company was ranked as the number 2 fastest growing private company in the Twin Cities in 2018 by the Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal and a 2019 top workplace by the Star Tribune. Terri is especially proud of building a compelling culture that engaged and empowered employees to deliver their best performance in pursuit of achieving their shared company mission. Terri led the company through a very successful exit and sale to Illuminate Education in June 2019. Terri's business and leadership acumen have been recognized as well. She made a list of CEOs in the Real Power 50 by Minnesota Business and was a recipient of a Titan of Technology Award from Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal. Additionally, she's a Junior Achievement Board member. Prior to her very successful run at Fastbridge Learning, Terri launched and led a company called BrainHive, an innovative children's online ebook platform for school libraries. She was the president there. I could go on, trust me, but in the interest of getting her onto the program, I would just like to say how wonderful it is for us to have Terri Suter with us. Terri, great to have you with us.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for asking me. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Well, we got a lot of fun things to talk about, my friend. At what point in your career did you become interested in leadership, Terri? How did you become involved in developing leaders?
You know, I started to really find myself drawn to leadership roles probably around my high school years. You mentioned that I'm on the Junior Achievement Board, and that was actually, I was a JA kid and was also very involved in DECA as a high school student. And that was really my first sort of foray that I realized, like, this thing around leadership was intriguing, interesting, compelling, engaging for me. When I moved on in my university days at the University of Hawaii, I had the opportunity to step into a role as president of the student union at the university. And that was really my first, like, wow, this is cool stuff. And I just found myself drawn and continue to this day, drawn to opportunity to lead. I think, my interest in developing leaders came as, over the course of my career, as I had opportunities to kind of hear from, employees, colleagues who were coming to me and saying like, hey, tell me a little bit more about how you do X, or, former employees letting me know how much they appreciated my leadership. And I kind of dug in a little bit like, well, what about my leadership? What was interesting about it to you? And also watching other women struggling with, some important decisions about their careers as choices were expected around family, which is a unique dynamic, I think, for women in their careers. And so those kind of aspects really helped me get interested in what I could do to leverage my experience and my interest in leadership to help others.
Okay. Boy, am I envious. I don't know that I've ever met anybody who went to their undergraduate work at the University of Hawaii. I'm so envious.
It was pretty special. I can't tell a lie.
I would imagine. I'm thinking it's way more fun than going to school in Madison and Minneapolis.
It was, and as a Wisconsin born and raised young woman, it was pretty spectacular opportunity.
Oh, that's great. Good for you. So Terri, I love to ask people about their favorite musical act or their favorite band or artist. Do you have one?
Oh, of course, absolutely. And as my friend, I love music. I'm a huge music fan. Music of just about every genre. But one of my favorite pastimes is going to see live music events and attend music festivals. Hands down, my favorite band is Coldplay. My husband and I have seen them live probably, 7-8 times. And Dave Matthews Band's a close second.
Okay. Well, those are a couple of my favorite acts. I can't say that I've ever seen either of them live, despite being addicted to seeing live concerts and many festivals myself. Tell us a little bit about maybe the best business book that you've ever read or the best leadership book that you've ever read.
Great question. If I could give a book to every new business leader, the one I would start with is Culture Code, which is written by Daniel Coyle. It's one of my favorites, maybe my top favorite. And I'm such a huge believer in being purposeful in building your company culture. And that directly leads to employee engagement, focus, and allows a good CEO, I think, to tie purpose to performance and growth. And of course, you need product and market fit, and you need purpose and engagement to your vision and mission and goals. I just say read Culture Code. Culture and performance are not mutually exclusive, and I'm a big believer in let's dispel the myth that culture is kind of a soft thing for CEOs. That is absolutely my favorite business book.
Okay, well, that's a good one. I remember you recommending that to me a few years back, and I read through it, and I'm a fan as well. I would love to go back and talk a little bit about your current role at Illuminate Education, running the Fastbridge organization within Illuminate Education. Is there anything going on at Fastbridge Learning that you'd like to put in the spotlight for our listeners?
That's a great question. And after we sold the company to Illuminate a year ago, I stayed on, and my top initiatives and goals is to continue to make Fastbridge as wildly successful within Illuminate as we had enjoyed prior to being acquired by Illuminate. And one of the things that is really super pertinent to the environment that we're in right now with coronavirus is what's happening in the school market. The virus almost immediately precipitated across the country 55,000 school districts closing their doors, their buildings, and us within about a week to 2 weeks time going from a traditional in-person instruction to across the country distance learning, remote learning type of modality. And it definitely put stressors on educators. It put stressors on children and certainly parents as well. One of the things that I think that we have a great opportunity in is helping to kind of settle and support educators as they come back to the upcoming school year and go back to best practice, go back to what we know works. And part of that is right in our wheelhouse relative to understanding where your students at, where have they slipped in terms of their learning, and where can you really hone in as an educator on identifying and intervening and providing additional instruction to help kids accelerate their learning and get back on track. And we're really ideally suited for that. And so it's an exciting place to be, but it's also a really tumultuous time in the school market. And we're excited to continue to partner and be so passionate about what we can do for educators in this environment.
I wish you the best of luck. I think we could all use a little bit less tumultuous and a little bit more, let's get things back the way that we want them. I wish you the best with that. Terri, did you have any leadership mentors along the way who made a big impression or a big investment in you?
Oh, absolutely. I actually consider my father to be my number one leadership mentor. My dad has had an incredibly successful career founded on his love of teaching and coaching. And as a young girl, I remember spending hours and hours and hours at the basketball court, hanging around, and golf courses. My dad was a high school basketball coach and golf coach. And I just watched my dad spend hours coaching young people. He turned that into a successful sales and sales leadership and later a coaching and consulting business. And I learned so much from just watching his interactions, understanding his values and philosophy of leadership. And so absolutely to this day, he's the first person I pick up the phone and call when I'm needing to understand what's going on in my world and put that in the context of my leadership. On the non-family side, though, also there is an amazing woman in education technology by the name of Birdie Stafford. She's now retired happily, and she took me under her wing in my mid-career, and she really just invested time in helping me understand organizational dynamics. She did what I now subscribe to, which is really to reach down, to lift me up, encourage, coach, help to build my confidence and tap my curiosity to really lean in at a time in my life when I was juggling and the crossroads between my ambition for my career growth and leadership, while also being at that time a single mother of an elementary age son. And I'm eternally grateful to Bernice for showing me that care, that attention, that encouragement. And it meant a lot in terms of the decisions that I ultimately made that have gotten me to where I am today.
How nice to have had such a great experience with multiple great leaders taking you under their wing. I'm always fascinated by how often that's how we get involved in leadership and learn from others. Somebody sees some potential in us and makes an investment in us. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that with us, Terri. We're going to take a short break for a commercial from one of our sponsors. Today's corporate world is full of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Frankly, the stakes have been raised. The pressure to deliver results has gone up, and the need to raise the level of your game has increased as well. What are you doing to invest in taking your game to a whole new level of clarity and accountability? If I told you that Michael Beach Coaching and Consulting has developed hundreds of high-performance C-suite executives and emerging leaders, would you be intrigued? Hiring an executive development coach can help an up-and-coming leader to bridge the gap between understanding what to do and actually getting it done on a consistent basis. At Michael Beach Coaching and Consulting, we develop each of our executives in over 15 fundamental areas of business, including communications, managing change, understanding motivation and behavior, emotional intelligence, executive presence, leadership development, team building and collaboration, and many, many more. We use behavioral and emotional intelligence assessments, coaching, and pure education to sharpen the skills of our developing leaders. As we begin to understand what the leaders want and need, we help them to build their confidence quickly through achieving results consistently that raise their visibility within their company and their influence with others. We focus on both the soft people skills of management and leadership, and also the hard, data-driven and process-oriented skills of delivering results. The combination of our approach leads to such extraordinary results that we are confident in providing performance guarantees to our clients. So give us a call at 651-335-4505 at our Minnesota office or our Arizona office at 520-732-2266. And have a conversation with me, Michael Beach, about reserving the opportunity for you or one of your colleagues to work closely with one of our master coaches to take your game to an entirely new level. You owe it to yourself to see what having an executive coach on your team could do for you and for your business. All right, we're back from our break. As you develop leaders in your organization at Illuminate Education, have you come to some conclusions about maybe 2 or 3 things that an aspiring leader of the future could do to improve their leadership skills?
Yeah, of course. I think for me, what I believe really strongly in is building relationships. I think, in my opinion, that's a number one key to success in that regard. I just think leaders have to avoid sort of the behind the glass doors or ivory tower sort of mentality, and reach in and build relationships in the organization to have frankly the opportunity to inspire and encourage other leaders. How do you know who to encourage? Who do you know who's open, interested, and open to the possibilities without building those relationships? So for me, that's number one. Otherwise, I'd say, listen, seek to understand, break down barriers. Those are, I'd say 2 or 3 things that, just generally speaking, if you're looking to improve your leadership skills, do those things well. Listen, build relationships, seek to understand. That, at least in my experience, have been real important keys to success.
Well, those are some fantastic recommendations, Terri. As you were talking about relationships, I was reminded by how often in my work as an executive development coach, I have to remind people how important it is to build relationships. It's really fundamental to having a network of people that you can collaborate with, and people who trust you and that you trust, so that, working together gets easier rather than more difficult. And we've got to build those relationships, like you said, in all directions and with all levels of people that you interact with. Some great tips there. Thank you. Have you noticed particular obstacles or barriers that your emerging leaders tend to be slowed down by in your experience, or maybe even get stuck behind?
This one, so the answer is yes. And, I will speak to this specifically through the lens of women in leadership. I think that there's just a tendency, and I talked a little bit when I was talking about Bernice and what she did for me, that I found myself in my career, and I see this so often amongst women, and especially, and in many regards, and of course we're getting greater attuned to the issues of racial equity as well. And I see some of the same tendencies, which is you kind of, you have these outside, these crossroads, these choices that have to be made about the balance between family and career. And they're not easy choices. I think one of the things that I've really noticed as a barrier is, the sort of this almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, Michael, where you feel like, okay, I have this choice to make, and it is a choice. It is a hard choice versus, well, how do I navigate this in a way where I can continue to do the things that I need and want to do for my family and maybe my community, and also enjoy success in my career. And so, one of the things I would say, and I've talked to people that I mentor, which is it's okay to take risks. And, Sheryl Sandberg coined the lean in, and I believe in it very much. Lean into the opportunities. I have found, following your curiosity. And, the other thing too that I will mention, Michael, is that I think folks sort of get stuck in this idea that career paths are linear. And, reflecting on my own career, it has absolutely not been linear. And as I think about some of the other great leaders that I interact with and I know, and you really start to dig into, well, how did they get to the positions they're in? It's very rarely linear. It's about leaning in and following your curiosity and taking opportunities that maybe they don't look like the traditional path, but if you follow those, it opens up more opportunities and more doors. So that's one where I just think, don't allow sort of the mental barriers prevent you or get stuck on or slow down your aspirations around leadership.
Tremendous advice. I love the idea that career paths are not always linear. I had the same exact experience throughout my career. If there was anything linear about it, that was an exception to the rule. Things were going in multiple directions, career-wise, the whole way. Great advice. What's the greatest leadership advice anybody has ever given you, Terri?
Great question. I don't tend to be a micromanager when people ask about leadership style. That's usually one of the first things, like, here's what I'm not. I'm not a micromanager. I do like to understand the details of my business. And I tell my leadership team, like, no surprises, right? And being clear about the key metrics and KPIs in the business, looking at them routinely, regularly, expecting your direct reports to communicate often and well has worked really well for me. The best advice and slogan that I heard several years ago and sticks with me literally every day, often multiple times a day, is the moniker check, check, double check, which is attributed to a dear family friend of ours by the name of Eddie Sherman, who was an auto industry executive, now retired. But the saying actually came from his time as a platoon leader in Vietnam. And I never forget that. It's the check, check, double check, and it goes through my mind every day, all day.
I suspect I'm going to remember that one for a while. Check, check, double check.
It's easy, right? Check, check, double check. But it's so basic and easy, but yet it's so true.
Makes a lot of sense too. How important have core values been during your experience with Fastbridge Learning and Illuminate Education?
Incredibly important. I believe really strongly in building purpose-driven organizations. You and I have talked about that so many times, and I just believe culture is critical to business success, and core values are a foundational element to culture. As CEO, I consider myself, and I consider frankly every CEO, to be the chief culture keeper of the company, and being purposeful in setting, nurturing, and demonstrating the culture. And as I said, core values are foundational to what kind of a culture, what kind of an organization are you building here. Without values, you don't have culture. Amen.
Couldn't agree with you more. And I hear lots and lots of people come to the conclusion that, they're just placards on the, wall of the boardroom or the training room. And in companies where that's true, there's really not much culture. In companies like the one that you've been involved with, Fastbridge Learning and Illuminate Education, the core values are part of how business gets done every day. That's what makes the difference.
You have to demonstrate it from the top every day. So
yeah, I agree with you 100%. Always starts at the top. When you're recruiting leaders to an organization that you're leading, Terri, what are some of the characteristics and traits that you're looking for in the people that you want to recruit to your team?
I think it's so important for business leaders to surround themselves with a great talented group of people around you. It truly takes a village. You can't do it alone. Kind of the first thing I look for is obviously functional excellence and competencies that are right sized to the organization. So thinking about what do you need not just for today, but where are you going in the future? In other words, I want to bring in leaders that know how to execute and scale to where we're aspiring to go. Early in my career, someone once told me to dress for the job you want, not the job you have. It's kind of the same concept. Hire for the business you want, not the business you have, when it comes to skills and experience and competency. But beyond the tangible skills, I actually spent a lot of time looking for the intangibles or the untouchables, much of which is tied to elements of having high emotional intelligence, the care and importance or priority around employee engagement, customer centricity, communication style, resiliency is a huge one, and frankly, just having a good sense of humor. Running and building a company is hard work. Let's please have fun while we're doing it.
Wow, that was a string of pearls of wisdom if I ever heard one. Some really great characteristics to look for. I agree with you that high emotional intelligence is always an advantage, and you listed so many other great characteristics. I would encourage you listeners to go back and rewind that and listen to it again because it was a great list. Thank you, Terri. You've obviously invested a lot of your time and energy over the years to become a great leader yourself, Terri. Can you identify maybe the best single leadership development investment you've made in yourself over the years?
Yeah, but it really kind of came in more recent years where I felt like I had the opportunity and the resources to do it. But I would encourage others, if you can do it earlier in your career, please do, which is coaching and peer group opportunities. Personally, I'm involved in a couple here in the local community, the Women Presidents Organization, which is not just local, but we've got 6 or 7 chapters in the Twin Cities, one of the largest in the country. That group and getting together with those other women presidents every month and building those relationships. And then I'm also in Allied Executives, which is a similar type of CEO peer group networking organization. I have found both of those to be tremendous investments for me, mostly just, to learn from other business leaders. One of the things that's been a big takeaway around that investment is many, regardless of the industry, and in some regards, even size, the issues that we grapple with in business tend to be fundamental foundational issues. And sometimes, when you're really working in the business, you kind of can't see the forest for the trees, and taking those opportunities and kind of tapping into other folks about lessons learned. How did you do this? Have you ever seen this happen? It reminds you that if you can kind of pull yourself up and work on the business, it's the same sorts of foundational issues that we're all managing, right, through a unique industry or, business size lens. So that's been a tremendous investment. And then, of course, I've been working with you, which has been a tremendous opportunity, because that coaching experience is one. And I wish I could have done it 10 or 15 years ago. It's been a great investment.
Well, thank you. I have enjoyed working with you too. I want to talk a little bit about the networking opportunities that you were talking about. You mentioned women's President's Organization and allied executives. For all of our listeners, if you're not networking with people in your industry on a regular basis, you are missing a golden opportunity. And I know that Terri has worked very, very hard over the years to make sure that she is a frequent speaker at trade shows and events. She participates in these networking organizations where, as she mentioned a few moments ago, she can learn from her peers and exchange ideas and just become a thought leader and surround herself with other thought leaders. If you're not doing that, that is probably one of the easiest things to add to your schedule, and you'll find few things that you can do that will pay off as quickly as just getting involved and engaging with your industry. Terri, fair to say that was a strategic piece of gold for you?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, my only regret is that I didn't do it earlier in my career. And I would encourage folks, if you can, to take those opportunities and make the investment. It has paid off for me personally and professionally over and over.
Glad to hear it. What would you like to recommend, Terri, to our audience about investing in others? You've invested in other people to try to help them develop as great leaders. Anything you would tell our audience about how that's gone and what you would recommend people do?
Yes, of course. And I'll say there's something that's been sort of on my mind of late. I actually wrote about this a little bit on LinkedIn earlier this week, which is I've been reflecting. We're living through a really interesting times here. And I've been reflecting on this summer is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. And, within the context of it being an election year and the extraordinary dynamics of a pandemic and a movement for social justice and racial equity, the reflections on the 19th Amendment are all the more compelling for me personally. I think equality in the voting booth has not led to equity in other facets of our lives, as we absolutely are faced with. I think it's a privilege and it's a responsibility of leaders, frankly, to create opportunities for others to be successful and have greater agency in their success. I think that I think about this a lot when I look across my organizations at all the talented people that are early and mid-career. I have such a strong desire to reach down, to lift them up with words and action that communicate that I see their potential, I see their talent. I want to encourage them to lean in, to take risks if you want it. And if you don't, that's okay too. But if you do, go for it. And when I reflect on my own experiences, undoubtedly, I was privileged and fortunate. I've worked hard, but I've also had many that have reached and encouraged and taught and opened doors for me. So I know many women and just people in general that are deserving of those same opportunities and encouragement. That gave me the confidence and the courage to follow my curiosity to the C-suite. So I would just say keep lifting up the people in your lives.
Well, I suspect that's one of the reasons why your teams are always so enthusiastic in following you. And they clearly love you and are very, very loyal to you because you do make investments in the people around you and try to create opportunity for them. My final topic for you, Terri, you mentioned that one of the things you wanted to talk about with me today was culture and building purpose-driven organizations. You, I think, mentioned that you want to dispel the myth that our culture is soft. So let's talk about that. Yeah.
It's one of the things I'm super passionate about. I talk about it a lot. I probably am annoying about how much I talk about it, but I'm so passionate about this concept of it. I think that there is this myth that culture is sort of this soft thing, and that what business leaders most need to pay attention to is, pay attention to the numbers, pay attention to your, the metrics, and that's the measure of business performance, success. And Absolutely it is. If you're not hitting those performance expectations, well, you know what happens there. But I believe so strongly, Michael, that culture and performance are inexorably linked. I have found incredible success, and I'm very passionate about, if you, as the CEO and frankly, as a greater executive leadership team, if you're very purposeful in what you're building and you can drive purpose behind the mission, and you're deliberate in what you are, the type of organization that you are building, that creates engagement, it creates loyalty, it creates focus, which then can be directed back to the strategies, the expectations, the performance expectations of the business in a way that creates a common path for the entire organization to sort of rally around and ground themselves in, and that drives the type of successful business performance that CEOs are expected to deliver. And I just believe those two things are, you cannot unlink them and have the most successful organization results. So yeah, I love talking about this. I love to dispel this myth that, circles around boardrooms, that culture is a soft thing and let's not talk about that. I think you have to talk about it, and I think one leads to the other.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've spent my entire career believing that if you want to achieve all of those metrics and results that the board of directors and your shareholders are expecting from your organization, you're going to have to, step one is surrounding yourself with a very talented, very motivated team. And the only way to do that, from what I've been able to discern over the years, is to invest in people and to manage them and motivate them and lead them in a way where culture becomes the very fabric of the business, and everybody knows what's expected of them in every situation, and they just do the right things over and over and over again. And amazingly, along the way, your focus on people and culture delivers those results like clockwork, quarter in, quarter out. Well, that's our episode today, leaders. We want to thank our special guest, Terri Suter, the president of Fastbridge Learning, a division of Illuminate Education. Thank you, Terri, for contributing your time, your energy, and sharing some stories with our What Are You Doing listeners. We appreciate your thoughtful commentary and your contribution to our program and the ongoing success of our tribe of leaders. Our next episode will feature Michael Anderson, the author of the best-selling sales management book, A Culture of Predictable Sales. Michael is also a sought-after national sales and leadership coach who's really known for his ability to ask the right questions and then provide keen insights that lead to unique market positioning, along with Michael's proven best practices. Should be a great episode yet again. Thank you, listeners, for joining us today, and please reach out to us at info@michaelbeachcoach.com if you've got a great suggestion for a future episode guest or want to become a featured guest yourself. We'll look forward to spending our next episode together with you. Until then, remember, keep moving forward. If you build early momentum and you keep your fire stoked as a way of life, the fire will keep burning brightly and your momentum will carry you all the way to the promised land. See you next time.